All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the pre-stream. Thanks for joining me on my Photography Masterclass each Friday. And we normally go from 11 till noon Eastern Time. But if you're watching on one of my channels like Facebook or YouTube, you know that I like to give you just a bonus tip to start things off before we kick off on the main stream on Adobe Live. So welcome for people that are watching live and welcome for people that are watching the replay. Let's get straight to the tip. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my desktop, and I have this cropped portrait. It was a group shot, but I just cropped it down to my dearly departed auntie. And when I was working on photos for the service memorial and all that, I noticed that a few of them that they wanted to use had a reflection or glare or softbox in the glasses. And I get this question all the time: how do I remove a reflection or glare in glasses? And I always tell people there's no magic to it. It's not easy. It depends. And every situation is going to be different. This one's not that bad. I could even just clone a little bit of her eye and do it. But in a case where, let's say this eye was completely covered and this eye wasn't, then we still have a shot. But when both eyes are completely covered, that's when it gets really, time consuming and hairy. So I'm going to go ahead and just switch to a rectangular marquee selection. And I'll go ahead and just make that selection over the good glasses. In other words, the part that doesn't have the reflection. So let's just do it right here. Now, and again, I'm just kind of eyeballing where that reflection problem is on the other side. I might need to move it over just a bit, but you get the idea. So now once I have that, I'm just going to do a new layer via copy or Command J. New layer via copy, Command J, and that will put that up on its own layer all by itself. Now I can use the Move tool and move it over. And of course, it kind of looks okay from the glasses standpoint, but it should be reflected because both our eyes are not the same. They're not going the same way. So we just go to Free Transform, Command T, right click, and flip horizontal. When we flip horizontal, it's going to look crazy because her head was slightly tilted. So we need to tilt the glasses part so that it lines up. Now, you're probably eyeballing it at this point. You still don't know if it's really lined up until you go in and lower the opacity while you still have it selected. Once you, I guess pretty good. Once you lower the opacity, you'll be able to see if it's lined up, and if it's not, you can line up the pupil or line up the catch light in the eyes to get it just right. Now, again, lining it up perfectly. I'm trying to line it up on the glasses, not so much the eye, because that's what will be noticeable if it's off. So let's just get that just right. Then we can turn the opacity back up. We can go ahead and put it down. And then I want to go ahead and add a mask to that layer that hides everything. So I'm just going to hold down my Option key, click a mask that hides everything. So just Option Mask turns the whole mask black. Then I'll use my white paintbrush to paint in just the area that has the problem. So that way I'm fixing just that one spot and not replacing necessarily her whole eye. Now, you'll take your time, you'll do a better job than what I'm doing here, and you might want to go ahead and replace part of the eye to make it match better. But, you might have some toning issues too. But anything that you have on that layer that needs to be corrected can be, and you can always switch back to white if you did too much. So that's just one quick way to fix a reflection in a eyeglasses situation. Hey Thomas, thanks for being here. We're about to kick off with the live, and yep, I know it's hard to share it from a group to another group, but we'll give you a way to do that hopefully going forward. All right, I'll be right back in a few seconds. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my Photography Masterclass. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe. It's my pleasure to be streaming to you once again on a Friday morning, at least Friday morning my time, about cool things in photography and the photography process. From time to time, we actually do live shoots because it is a Photography Masterclass. But in the days of COVID, we spend most of our time doing the post-processing work, the Lightroom and Photoshop work. And so that, we don't get a chance to shoot as much as I would like to in studio because, I normally photograph people and we don't want to bring a bunch of people in right now. So with that said, I see a bunch of people coming in from all over, all the different platforms. So welcome. Thanks for being here. I see people on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Just great. Thanks for all being here. But I do want to remind you that if you want to participate in the chat, if you want to see, what's going on, you should probably head over to b.net/Adobe Live. All right, so Tim's letting me know that I have an audio sync issue. Tim, great to know, but as you know, there's not a whole lot I can do about it unless I were to quit the stream and reboot it. So I don't know what else I could do. So let me try one thing real quick. I'm just going to bounce out to my lobby. And I don't know if that would correct it, but it was worth a try. All right, so just if it's out of sync, guys, just pay attention to what's going on the screen, and you can hear my words. That's what's most important. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and head over to my desktop where we're going to start our tips. And the way I decided to do this was that if you're interested in Lightroom, I got Lightroom tips. If you're interested in Photoshop, I got Photoshop tips. But I want to give them equal time. So I'm going to kind of like keep an eye on the time, hopefully. And at the half-hour mark or the halfway point, what I hope to do is switch over to Photoshop. So we're going to go ahead and start with our Lightroom, and then we'll switch over to Photoshop midway through. So that way, each environment or each system gets its just due. So let me, before I switch over, let me head over to my proper collection here so I can be working on the photos I want to work on. And I think these will do it. Yep, these will do it. All right, so let's switch over to my desktop so you can see me. And here we are on the desktop. And what I'd love to do is, I'm just checking. What I'd love to do is start with my first tip. Okay, so this is one I took for granted. I actually hit the key by accident recently, and I was like, I forgot all about that tip. So it's called Lightroom for a reason, and pretty much since the beginning, you've had the ability to turn lights on or off. So just when you're in your grid view or whenever you're in Lightroom, period, you hit the letter. Let me get back to it. There we go. Now it's not working. Oh my God. First tip, not working. Hang on. That worked. Okay, it's working now. It paused for a second. Simply hitting the letter L will dim your interface down. Hitting the letter L for lights will turn them off. And hitting the letter L again will turn them back on. I don't know why it was like, I'm having one of those mornings technology-wise. But L, and L for just narrowing down and looking at your photo and nothing else. So that way you get to hide all the distractions around your photo with all the interface of Lightroom and just concentrate on your photo. Now, speaking of keyboard shortcuts, one of the ones that kind of changed over the years with Lightroom Classic was how you do full screen. So it actually became a better keyboard shortcut. Just hitting the letter F goes to full screen. Great. Hitting the letter F again takes you back out. So that's an easy one to remember. F for full screen. Great. But what it used to do was make your interface to Lightroom, like your window, full screen. And so that didn't go away, but what it did is got replaced with another keyboard shortcut. So instead of hitting F to make your interface go full screen, you hit Shift F, and your interface will continue to go full screen. So Shift F goes back to just Lightroom in a window, Lightroom Classic in a window. Shift F gets rid of the title bar. Shift F again gets rid of everything as far as the OS is concerned, and then you're just concentrating on Lightroom full screen. And this is great back whenever we get back to having clients look at over our shoulders and look at the screen, because then it takes away everything else. And because of your identity plate in the upper left-hand corner, you get to customize Lightroom so that it's yours. It's your studio. It's in other words, they're looking at your studio, not something from Adobe. They're looking at Lightroom. All right, or your photography. So Shift F, Shift F, Shift F, toggles between the three. LLL toggles between those three. Full screen, toggles between those. Okay, next up. One of the other things I get asked a lot, and I don't know that I have, let's see if we go back to one that I did earlier. Let's see if this one's been done. Yeah. So this was a live shoot we did a couple months ago now, where we're just talking about, I think we're doing macro photography, or this is one of the ones for macro photography. This is another one. Yeah. And you notice that because I was tethering, those images did come in as raw files. So they came in, from their native format off the camera. So if you were shooting Canon, they'd be CR2s. I think Sony starts with A or AR or something. But anyway, whatever your native format would be, that's what they would be. So I get this question, well, you say convert to DNG when you're doing your import. How do you convert to DNG if you're shooting tethered? And that, because you don't have that option when you're tethering, because it wants to come in as quickly as possible. So what you can do is you can just simply select the photos that need to be converted after the fact. So I won't do them all just for the sake of time, but let's select a few, go to your library menu and come down to convert photos to DNG. So you have the ability to do it after the fact. So if I say convert photos to DNG, I get a bunch of choices. Let me just go over a couple of these. Only convert raw files, meaning don't spend time trying to convert something that's not a raw file. Delete the originals, and this is the important part, after a successful conversion, because I don't need both. If it's successfully converted, then yeah, go ahead and get rid of the original NEF files. Whatever file extension you want, capital or not, I usually use lowercase, and whether or not you want what size JPEG preview you want, if one at all. And I usually use medium. All right, embed the fast load data so that they show quicker on screen. And I don't use a lossy compression because I want to keep my files the same quality. Lossy compression is like a JPEG. It will lose quality. So that's why that's unchecked by default. And for the belt and suspenders crowd, people that need that extra security, you can embed the original raw file. It's just going to make it twice the size. So I don't do that either. So I'll click OK. The great thing about it is a background process. So if you want to keep working, going and doing other things, it will do it. And then it will go ahead and convert. Now, the other question, we can get into a whole discussion of why DNG. I'll just give you a couple just a few reasons right off the bat. We won't get into a long discussion. I usually do it because A, it tends to make my files smaller without losing quality. It's every bit of raw file still. B, when you have a DNG, that means it can embed any metadata that you've used in Lightroom or any other program to edit the file without non-destructively, of course. And so therefore I don't have a separate sidecar file, and I just like less files anyway. And third, and this is probably the biggest reason, is that in my lifetime, I've seen camera formats go away meaning that camera companies go away. You know, you think Kodak, you think Polaroid, you think companies that used to make a raw format. That format has kind of disappeared. And one thing you never worry about is you never worry about JPEG going out of business, because there's no such company or thing called JPEG. So it's a format, meaning that no one owns it. So therefore, if I convert to DNG, I never have to worry about it because it's an open standard from the standpoint anyone can read and write to it. So anyone can create an application, even if Adobe went away, that would always be able to open up a DNG file. That's not going to be guaranteed for all your proprietary formats that are out there. All right, so convert to DNG after the fact. Now, along those same lines, I'll do this tip now because we're talking about the same kind of thing. After the fact, you can also create smart previews. Now, I usually have smart previews checked when I'm importing directly into Lightroom, just so it creates them on the fly. But if you didn't create them because you were tethered or you just forgot, you can go into your library menu, you can come down to previews, and you can build smart previews after the fact. Now, what's the difference between a smart preview and a one-to-one or a standard or whatever? Smart previews, first of all, they travel not with the photos, they travel with the catalog. So my catalog, like for example, let's say it's on my laptop, all smart previews will be on my laptop too, even if the images aren't. With a smart preview, I have the options of being able to edit or work with the photo, even if I don't have the real photo with me, even if I don't have that drive connected with me that has all the original photos. I have over 200,000 photos in Lightroom. Those 200,000 photos aren't on this computer. But the ones that are important to me, I have smart previews, so I can still edit them, even if those 200,000 photos aren't connected at that time. Once I reconnect that drive, the edits that I've applied would apply to the full resolution originals. Okay, so build smart previews. It's a background process. It already happened. I probably had already built these. But it will now allow me that if whatever drive these were on, that drive were disconnected, I'd still see the icons. I'd still be able to go into the develop module. I'd still be able to work on them. I'd even still be able to export them out, just not full resolution, not full size. All right. And smart previews, I believe, are 2540 pixels, 2540 pixels on the longest edge. That number changes, so I'm not sure if that's still the case, but that's what it was. All right, meaning it's gone up before. But I believe that is the current size. All right, next up, let's go back and let's talk about, I guess I can do that now. Let's go talk about searching and searching and searching. So as you can see, I've got probably over 100 collections. I love collections. I organize that way so I can find things. So part of the problem with finding things is that it's not so much that I don't know what it's called. It's just scrolling, trying to find my Iceland collection, or trying to find my Paris collection, or trying to find a family member's name collection. So what was added not too long ago is the ability to search or filter collections based on a name that you put in. So if I go in and I search for Iceland, since I use that example, it will show me all my Iceland collections. Even if it's buried in a collection set, it will show them all to me, and then I can quickly get to the one I want. So I can even leave that filter on while I work. So if I go to Iceland 2016. I'll go back to those shots. I went on a trip with Scott Kelby. There we are on a plane. And then we start getting to all the photos. Now, what if I wanted to know, or I wanted to see which photos I took with, or I wanted to see the photos I took with a specific camera or lens or whatever? You have the ability, once you're in a collection or folder, you have the ability to go in and go to metadata up here at the top. So you click metadata, and metadata gives you 4 columns, but you're not limited to what those 4 choices are. Like my 4 choices came up as date, camera, file type, and label. Well, I don't care about the label right now. I don't care if it's green, blue, whatever. I care about, and by the way, it's filtered to iPhone 7 Plus, which I didn't use on that trip. So that's why it's 0 images. I'm going to go ahead and go to all, and it shows me all my images again. But if I go to change one of these categories to, I don't care about labels. I can go in and change it to, there we go, up here at the top. I can change it to lens. So I want to see which ones were shot with my wide angle lens, my 14 to 24. So now I can look at just the 416 photos that were shot with that lens. Or I can say, show me all the ones that were shot with my drone. So there's all the ones that were shot with that particular drone I took on that trip, and I can just see them right there. So you can, in a collection or folder, you can narrow down to just what you're looking for. And again, if you can use multiple criteria. So I can say, show me all the, let's go back to the, show me all the ones I shot with my D810 that were Photoshop files. That means I edited them. So show me those. And then it shows me just my D810 Photoshop files. And that means these are the ones that I edited. Whether they have a star rating, a pick flag or not, I'm seeing them all because when I'm working for myself, I don't always remember to add a star rating or add a pick flag as a favorite. So this way I could now select them all and I could go in and say, oh, these are all picks. These are all good. Or these are all 5, hit a 5 for 5 stars. Because if I edited it, that means I liked it enough to edit it, so it must be good enough to use. All right, so by the way, bonus tip, now that I've got these selected. One of the most frustrating things that people end up doing is they select 2 or more photos like I just did, and they do something, and they forget to deselect. And then they go in to develop, and they end up developing or editing multiple photos that they didn't mean to edit. So you have the ability to go in and deselect. Now, people, when they get all photos selected and they don't have one to click on that they can just click on to deselect, they tend to do things like, oh, I know if I hold down my command key and click, it deselects that one, then I can click on that one to deselect the rest. That's too many steps. It's just, you can do it faster. So let's say I select all again. First and foremost, just like in Photoshop, which that's one of my Photoshop tips, by the way, there is a select none. And it's even the same keyboard shortcut that it is in Photoshop. Command D on Mac, Control D in Windows. So that will select no photos, just like that. But I've got a bonus tip that's even cooler. If you notice, when I have them all selected, there's one photo that has a brighter background, like this one's whiter than the rest. The rest are kind of gray. This one's more white. And the joke is that you have all of them selected, how many I ever have, 13 selected. And that is the most selected photo. So if you were to go into the develop module right now, that's the one that would be shown. If I were to click on another photo, they're still all selected, but now this is the most selected photo. Well, you notice I'm clicking on the icon of the actual image to do that. Well, guess what? If you click above the icon, above the actual picture, just into the blank space, that will deselect all the other photos and just select that one. So you don't have to do a deselect and then a reselect or a deselect and then click on that one to deselect all the rest and all those tricks we were doing because we couldn't figure out how to get the other ones unselected. Just click in the space above the actual image, and that will deselect anything else and select just that one. Yep, unselected, selected, and most selected. Jan, you got it. All right. So that was a bonus one that even wasn't on my list, but while I was here, I thought about it. Now, we did search based on EXIF data. Now, I want to point out, I don't have it running here. Let me go ahead and launch it. I'm going to go ahead and launch Lightroom, not Lightroom Classic. We just call it Lightroom. I'm going to go ahead and launch Lightroom. And I'm going to go to All Photos. And scroll down, and we got some wedding pictures there from last weekend. and just a bunch of random pictures. But let's say I'm looking, and here's one we shot, a couple weeks ago. Let's say I am looking for a particular photo. Now, I went to the cloud version of Lightroom as opposed to Classic for this, because if I were, let's go back to Classic for a second. If I were looking for a specific photo, well, we know we can look for it by the data of the photo, camera, date, lens it was shot with, format it's in. Those are all metadata things. But if I'm looking for text, let's turn off metadata, then the only thing that's going to come up for text is either A, the name of the photo. So if I type in Iceland, it's going to find Iceland shots. That's why we rename, by the way. Or B, if I did keywords, which as you can see, I don't do keywords very often. None of these photos have keywords on them. So if I'm looking for my waterfalls, good luck. Because I'm going to have to remember I shot waterfalls in Iceland. Let's go to the Iceland collection. Let's scroll through and try and find some waterfalls, and I'll find some. But that wasn't the only place I shot waterfalls in my life. I've shot waterfalls all over the world, and I don't remember necessarily where I was when I shot the waterfall that I was looking for at any given time. So either I got to be more diligent and keyword things, or better yet, if you are using Lightroom, regular Lightroom Cloud, there is a search, and I'm on all photos right now, so all my 52,000 that are synced. If I were to type waterfall, it's going to find every waterfall that's in those 52,000 photos, even though I never keyworded any of these to say waterfall. How does this one do it? Because these are in the cloud, because that's the nature of Lightroom Cloud, that when you import, you're syncing. And Adobe Sensei knows what a waterfall looks like. So it says, oh, you're looking for a waterfall? I know where your photos are in the cloud. I will identify what waterfalls are, and it's artificial intelligence. It's going to guess wrong. So some of these, if I keep scrolling, probably aren't waterfalls. But I don't care. I don't care if 3 of them are not waterfalls, as long as it found the waterfalls. Like, it could find, some random other ones that I don't care about, but more importantly, we'll find the ones that I do care about, even though I don't remember when, where I was, or like, for example, these are not in Iceland. This one, I think, is in India. This one is in Oregon somewhere. This one's in LA. So it's going to find waterfalls no matter what. And that's the beauty of being able to search in Lightroom Cloud. So whatever keywords you put in, and not have to be just whatever words you put in, it will find them based on knowing what those things are without necessarily you ever having to identify them. I didn't name every photo waterfall. I didn't put keywords in. It just did it. All right, so let's go back to Lightroom Classic. Looking at the time, we're still good. Okay, let's keep going. So next up, and this is an important one. This is one of the coolest tips I'm going to show you today. When you're editing a photo, let's go in. What professionals tend to want to do is they want to go in and look at the photo full screen 1:1. That way they can pan around the photo and see if there's anything wrong, see if there's anything they missed. But chances are you're going to miss something just trying to pan around. So here's my favorite tip. If you have a keyboard with a home key, like I'm on an extended keyboard, so I got home, page down, page up, arrow keys, so forth and so on. I have a home button on this keyboard on my desktop computer. But on my MacBook Pro, there is no dedicated home key. So on a laptop, on a Mac, you could do function left arrow, and that is the equivalent of a home button. But in either case, if you have a home button or a laptop that has a home button equivalent, then just simply hit the home button and watch what happens in the photo. And here, we'll bring up the navigator so you can see it. I'm zoomed in right here. And so let's say I'm zoomed in on the rainbow. If I hit home, watch what the navigator does. It jumps all the way up to the corner. See, it went all the way, scrolled all the way to the corner of the photo. Cool. I'm looking at that quadrant of the photo, and I can see kind of what looks like a water spot right here in the cloud. So I could go into develop and fix that. But anyway, once I fix that and I hit page down, it goes to the next quadrant. Page down, page down, page down, page down. Now it's getting to the bottom. That's the bottom. If I hit page down one more time, what does it do? Up to the top, scrolls over. So page down, page down, page down. Find anything you need to fix. Oh, wait, whoa, 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 whoa. Go back up. There's a head there that needs to come out of this photo. I honestly never saw that. So that's what I mean by this. There's stuff you miss. So that head that I did not go up a little bit higher to get rid of needs to come out of this photo. And that's hilarious. I'm just now seeing that literally for the first time. All right, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And there's another little head. So I got some cleanup to do. Little things like that we miss all the time because we don't pan the photo to see if there's something we missed. And I couldn't stage that if I wanted to. I did not do that on purpose. Those little heads down there that I'm now seeing, I completely missed when I worked on this photo because I did not take the time to go all the way through. I don't even know what that is. It's not it. I don't think that, oh, that is a person maybe. But I need to now go back and clean some of this up. So let's say I did want to clean this up. I could go into Photoshop and do it, or I can do it right here in Lightroom. If it's something simple like this, I could use my spot removal tool. Oh, sorry, wrong tool. Spot removal tool, there we go. Make my brush a little bit bigger. And we're just going to go ahead and paint this person out of this. And notice how light, and this brings me to another tip. Notice how Lightroom randomly went way over there to pick a spot to clone from. And that spot works. But let's say you don't like that spot. You can go find wherever, you can go follow the line, go pick it up and move it to where you want it to be. Or you can use the /. So the slash next to your shift key on the bottom right, and it will randomly pick another spot. So now I can see where it picked. And I can just keep hitting the /. If I don't want to pick it up and move it myself, I just want it to guess, I can let it guess. So now I can go right back up, page up, page up, page up, page up, and do the same thing here. We got a person there. We got a person there. And it's letting me fix all these. Now that one, I don't mind because that's supposed to be there. And same thing here. I can't believe I missed all these. Page up. Because I did not use this technique. That's how I missed all those. And that's exactly what happens. But when I first saw this one a few minutes ago, I was cracking up. I'm like, God, wow, there's a blonde head right there. All right, I think that was the last one. Page through your photo, and then you can go back out to fit or fill to see everything you just did. Get out of the spot removal tool, and away you go. All right, so now I have a clean landscape photo without random heads at the bottom of it. Good thing I didn't sell this one. It would have been embarrassing. All right, next up, let's go into, so let's see a before and after. If you go into, you want to see your before and after, you can use your / key. So we were randomly picking a new spot with the /. With the / key, it toggles on before and after. So if you look at the bottom of this photo, or we can zoom into the bottom, before, after, before, and again, we can move over, after. So that toggles the before and after on so you can see what your photo is. So / for before and after. Okay, let's go into a portrait example here. I'm going to go jump out of Iceland. Let's get out of this collection. Iceland, get out of that. Go back to where we were for my Photography Masterclass photos. I think we were here. Sharpening people. So Lightroom and Camera Raw have a secret feature for sharpening people. And this will be, I think, our last Lightroom tip for now, and then we'll head over to Photoshop. When you're sharpening people and you go into your develop module and you go to detail, first of all, if it's a raw file, Lightroom automatically applies sharpening to it to bring back the sharpening lost in the import capture process. So it automatically sharpened the photo. But you'll notice that there's a masking slider that's all the way at 0. It has not been used, and that's off by default. What that masking slider is designed to do is mask out the areas you don't want sharpened. I want her hair sharpened. I want the purse sharpened. I want her fingernails sharpened, maybe her lips, definitely her eyes, but not her skin. I don't want her skin to be sharper. So what I could do is invoke the mask to tell it not to do skin. But if I just drag the slider, I can't really tell. Even if I zoom in, I can't really tell, like, is that really doing it? Is it not doing it? I can't tell. But there's a way to see it. If you hold down your Option or Alt key and drag that same masking slider, then you get a black and white preview. And basically everything that's white at 0 is being sharpened. So everything that, you don't see any black on this right now because it's at 0, that means sharpen everything. If I drag the slider until a comfortable spot where all the skin is not white or all the things I don't want sharpened are black, then it will only sharpen the things that are white. So her eyes are getting sharpened, her lips are getting sharpened, her nose is getting, her nostrils are getting sharpened, the outline of her face is getting sharpened, the bag is getting sharpened, the outline of it, parts of her hair are getting sharpened. And I can keep going. If I really want to narrow it down to specific areas, I can do that. But I would be comfortable right about here as long as my skin is not getting sharpened. So I would say I would pull it over until there's no skin that's white. And then once I get there, I know that any amount of sharpening I do now will only apply to those other things. So since it's only applying to those other things, I can actually go a little higher on the sharpening because it's not going to adversely affect her skin. So there used to be a preset for this. There used to be a preset called Sharpen Faces. Yep, it used to be there. I still have it. So in Lightroom Classic, you still have it too. It's just been buried, turned off, hidden from you. And because they replaced them with these new ones. These are the ones you have now. Sharpening, none, no sharpening. Light, which is still no sharpening, you can barely see any. Medium and heavy. But notice none of those are dedicated for people and none of those use the masking feature. So I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I like the Sharpen Faces thing. That was automatic. It was great. I just clicked Sharpen Faces and it would automatically mask. So I would want to have that back. Well, here's how you get it back. If you go to your preset menu and you go to Manage Presets. So there's a preset menu, Manage Presets. Wouldn't that be useful to be able to export a mask from that's Photoshop? It would be useful. Thanks, Mark. It would be useful. And if you go to your Manage Presets, all of your classic ones will be turned off. I turned back on Classic General and turned back on Classic Video. Because in your Classic General, that's where your Sharpen Faces is. Now, you're going to get all the other ones too, but Sharpen Faces is the one I like. Now, Sharpen Faces uses the old number, so it uses 35 instead of 40, and you can always change it. But look, it bumped up the masking to 60. So it's a preset, it's a default. You can always change the numbers, but it's just you get it by default now just by clicking a preset. Speaking of presets, I said that was going to be my last tip for Lightroom. I do have one more. If you go to Lightroom Cloud, you don't have that option because it was never in the cloud version. But what you can do is you can certainly go make your own. So let me go to my Photography Masterclass album, same photos. And we go grab one of these. So let's say we grab this one. And I don't know if it's synced yet, but if it did, it's going to already be sharpened. If not, no big deal. We don't have to wait for it. And if we twirl down sharpening, there we go. Yep, it's already done. So I've already got 35, 14, 15, 60, and let's say I bump it up to 40, which is the new default. Now, once you do that, you can go to your presets in in Lightroom Cloud, the presets button down here, and you can create your own user preset called Sharpen Faces. There's mine. Now, you can, so you go in up here to the menu, create preset, and I'm just going to call it Sharpen Faces Photography Masterclass. And I would turn off all the other things. I don't want it to do any of the other things, just do detail. So in other words, it won't override anything else I've done, just do that. Now that I've created that preset's also being synced as we speak to my phone and my iPad version of Lightroom. So if I go now work on a photo of a person on my phone or iPad, I go to presets, tap that preset, and that person gets sharpened. All right, that's it for, we're out of time for Lightroom. Let's switch over to Photoshop. I got a lot more. I always want to write down more tips than I think I'm going to get through, just so we can save them for another class. So let's go to our Photoshop one now. All right, so I'm going to head over to Photoshop. And in Photoshop, I'm going to, first of all, a lot of you will end up here when you launch Photoshop. So my first tip is that if you're on this screen, this was obviously designed to help you by giving you tutorials and tips and showing you your most recent documents and all that cool stuff. But if you really just want to get into Photoshop without having to open something or create a new document, it seems like there's no way to do that except the icon up here in the upper left corner, the Photoshop icon. If you were to click the Photoshop icon, it will take you into Photoshop. So you will get there and you will be there. Yep, I could always do a part 2, and Sean, you're right. You will get to the Photoshop interface even though you didn't open up a document. So that's the first tip. Second, and this is one of the most overlooked features of Photoshop, is that if you don't know how to do something, or you don't know where something is, let's go into this one. So I'm opening up a stock photo just to have something open. So I got the stock photo open, and I would love to select her with the new Object Select tool. I don't remember what that tool looks like. Maybe I don't even see it on my toolbar. So in Photoshop, there's a magnifying tool in the upper right-hand corner that's not zoom, it's actually search. When you click that, you can search everything, just Photoshop, meaning just the application, the learned content, Adobe Stock, or your Lightroom photos. So I'm just searching Photoshop. And I'm going to say Object Selection. And before I can even type it, there it is. It shows me the keyboard shortcut. It shows me what the icon looks like. And more importantly, if I click it, it takes me right to that tool. It outlined it in blue for a second, and then I could go ahead and use the Object Select tool. I don't know how that's going to work on just her, but it did. Just selected her head, and that's what the Object Selection tool is for. So if you ever needed to find something or find how to do something, just click the search and ask. And it's more than likely going to show you either where it is or a tutorial on how to use it, or both. So if I go back to it again, and I were to type in the word, and by the way, you undo Object Selection, now it's giving me an undo choice. But if I were to type clone, it's showing me all the things that have to do with clone. Now, if I were to search the learned content and I search clone, then it starts showing me tutorials on how to use clone. So if you're trying to learn something in Photoshop, chances are you could just search for whatever it is. I'm not trying to learn something, I'm just trying to remember where something is, find it, whatever it shows me. Okay, so that's searching. Next up, while we've got this image, and one more thing, you do have the ability to go to your Lightroom photos while you're in search, and it shows you your collections that were synced to the cloud. And if you go into one of those, you would be able to open that image up right there on the spot, and without having to even have Lightroom open, as long as you have images that were synced. Okay, next tip. Let's say you want to select an image or a person. And this is one I've been talking about since it got released in June, but it is one of my favorite new enhancements, is that you now have, you've had select subject from not very beginning, but you've had it for years. And it's Adobe Sensei powered, but select subject was never designed for people. So therefore, if you try to select people with hair, if you try to select a person with hair, you would get probably a bad selection of the hair. Her sweater, her hand, all that, her side of her face would be fine, but the hair wouldn't be so good. Now the same select subject has been tuned for portraits. So it will work just as good on non-portraits, but now it works good on hair as well. Now that selects it, and I could just duplicate that onto its own layer just to see it and turn it off, and it did a much better job than select subject ever would have done, but there's still a little blue left over. So let's undo, and let's go back to just that selection where we would use the complementary function of select and mask to fine tune it. Now when I go to select and mask, I can zoom in, and I can see the blue that got left over. Like there's just some blue traces that got left over. But look at the edges of the hair that it never used to do this good. I can then go in with my Refine Edge brush, make my brush a little bigger, but not too big, and I can start brushing out the blue. So it just automatically, because I started from the background, lets me start brushing that background out of my subject to get rid of that blue halo that we would have had around her hair. Now, keep in mind too that sometimes you're just going to have that color reflected onto the subject, meaning that like maybe on the sides of her face, it's just a bright light flashing blue onto her face. That's nothing. The Refine Edge won't do anything with that. But you could go in and decontaminate colors. So when you tell it to decontaminate colors, you're telling it take the background that you removed out of the reflection on the subject as well, and you'll get a better cutout just by doing that. I usually turn on a little smart radius as well and bump up the slider just a bit, and that will usually give me cleaner edges on the non-hair parts of the image. And then we'll go ahead and say I'll put this as a new layer with a mask, which you're going to do automatically when you say decontaminate colors anyway. And now you've got a much easier, faster clean out or clean cutout than you would have had you done it prior to June. It would have taken you much longer to do that. All right, next up. I don't want to do that yet. Let's go in and do, let's say I see this one here. Actually, let's talk about some ways to output. We never have time to talk about outputting stuff that we do because I always run out of time. So let me work that in now. If I wanted to save this image out with that transparency, we're used to saving photos as JPEGs. Well, if I save this as a JPEG, let's just do save as. Let's save it to my computer. Let's save it as a JPEG. Let's save it to the desktop so we can get to it quickly. Whatever quality. There, it's done. Go to my desktop. And go to my desktop. Oops. Hang on, just going to my desktop here. You're going to not see that transparency. You're going to see a white background because JPEG is not a transparency supported format. So it's just going to take anything that was transparent and make it white by default. You have no choice. So rather than doing an export as, or rather than save as JPEG, first of all, stop doing save as. It's time to stop using save as because there's better ways to get images out of Photoshop. If you're doing a save as, what you should be using that for is saving your editable layered Photoshop file to come back and work on it. So there's two choices now, and that's why that was another tip. If you save it to your computer, you certainly can, as you always did, as a Photoshop layered file, ready to go, done, it's layered. You'll be able to come back, open it up, still be transparent, still have the mask, still have everything you've ever done to it. Or save as, and use the other option, save to cloud documents. Now, what's this one for? This one is the one you've had for the last 30 years. This is the one that's new. This is another choice. If I save it as a cloud document, and I give it a name, woman with yellow sweater, no background. By saving it as a cloud document, it's now available to me everywhere I have access to Photoshop. So if I go to Photoshop on my iPad and I say open from cloud documents, that image is there with its layers ready to go. If I go to another computer I'm signed in with my same Adobe ID and I go file, open cloud documents, that image is there. So it's basically a way of saving Photoshop files in the cloud that you have the ability to go in and get to them anywhere you want. Also, another bonus tip is that cloud documents versus saving to your hard drive, auto-save. So that's either good or bad. It's good from the standpoint you don't have to remember to save. Even if I do something, close the document, it auto-saved. I'm never going to get a prompt, do you want to save? So good that it does that. Not good if you didn't want it to do that. But I think they're maybe going to address that at some point for people that don't want it to do that. All right, next up. So stop doing save as because you have better ways. File, export. So you have under this export menu, this is what's going to ultimately replace save as for all the other formats. In other words, if I just want a JPEG, a PNG file, a GIF, or whatever, that's what export as is for now. So when I do export as, I get a bunch of options that I like now. This has come a long way since when I first started working with it, so I like it a lot better than I used to. So first and foremost, I get the ability to export it as a transparent PNG or not. So I get the ability to say export PNG, JPEG, GIF, or SVG. I get to downsize it, which is important because maybe I don't want a 48 megapixel JPEG or PNG file for the web or for Instagram. So I could downsize it to an Instagram size. I also get the ability to create another copy of it. So I could say, make this one twice as big as the other one. Actually, that's not what I want. Yeah, okay, so yeah, make it twice as big as that one. So I end up with two files. One that's the original size that I told it to be, and one that is the newer size that I told it. You also can go in and change your color space, choose which metadata goes with it. So convert to sRGB, which is also a good thing for online or screen viewing. And then once I choose export, it'll ask me where. I can export that out to the desktop. And I'm exporting out that smaller PNG file without me having to worry about changing the size of the original. So that's why export is going to be your way to go. I used to, before recently, I used to always just use save for web. But what I found out is that when I'm usually downsizing the images in save for web, which by the way, kind of looks like this. This is the old way I used to do it. You do the same thing. You come in here and you tell it to size it down. Once you size it down and you choose your format, you do all those things. This is like, I don't know, 20 years old. So that sizing down quality setting, these aren't as new as the export as options for sizing down. So I did a test, and you do your own test. Do a save for web, same photo, save for web, change all the settings to be the same. Then do an export as, change all the settings to be the same, and look at both of the photos. I noticed that my export as was sharper. It looked better than save for web. And I was like, okay, that's it, I'm done. I'm using export as from here on out when I need to make an image smaller for the web, or smaller for online, or smaller for whatever. Okay, so export as, and by the way, here are my, my multiple files. Here they are. So that's the one that got saved that size. That's the one that got saved that size because I did the multiple presets as well. Oh, and by the way, we already saw the JPEG. Okay. Next up, let's do content aware, blah, 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 blah. All right, this is one just from a beginner standpoint that people always run into as a problem. You have something selected, like I just reselected her. And you notice we got the marching ants. That's cool. But if you wanted to work on something else now, you can't because she's selected. So it's only going to confine you to the area that you've got selected. How do I deselect the image? Because clicking somewhere else with another tool doesn't deselect in Photoshop, depending on the tool. So to deselect every single time successfully, it's the same keyboard shortcut that I showed you in Lightroom. This is where it came from. So deselect, or in this, we call it none in Lightroom, but Command D. That will always safely deselect whatever you have. So if you find yourself trying to paint, clone, or do something, and you notice it's not working, 9 times out of 10 it's because you're on the wrong layer, or you have something still selected. So I always, when I paint, it doesn't work, Command D, and then paint again. Oh, now it's working because that thing that's off in the corner that was selected is no longer selected now. All right, so next up, let me go back to my outline. And let's go here. Let's go in and talk about a couple of layers. Oh, speaking of, let me go back to export one more time. Speaking of the export thing that we did, I told you to do export as, which is great. You also have a default export as, and that is export preferences. Whenever you go in your export preferences, this is what you're telling the default export to be. So my default is JPEG 100% quality, and you can change it to whatever you want it to be, whatever your default would be. Why is the default important? Because there's a bonus tip. If you go to any layer or layer group, you can do a right click and do a quick export. And that quick export will be based on whatever that preference you set. So I can go into the full export as menu, but if I just do a quick export as JPEG, it just brings up the option to save it and it's done. So it will be whatever the preferences are. Anytime you quickly need to do an export, you can right click on something to do it. Next up, let's talk about saving my work, because it's a cloud document, just auto-saved. But next time you need to go in and you need to adjust an image, and you're used to the easy ways to do it in Lightroom. Because if you go into Photoshop, it can be quite intimidating to go into levels and curves and exposure and vibrance and all these things separately. We're used to Lightroom and Camera Raw because it's an easy interface with just sliders. Well, you can get to that easy interface once you're in Photoshop just by going in and choose Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and that it brought back the original background, but keep in mind it's not really there. It brought back because it's just masked, so it's not deleted, but it brought it back, and it brought it back with a bad hair job. But anyway, it brought it back, and now I could go in and use all the same easy sliders that I'm used to in Lightroom or Camera Raw, without having to worry about having to figure out curves and levels and so forth and so on. So if I just wanted to adjust the exposure rather than figure out levels, I can just adjust the exposure. If I wanted to have it a little bit more saturated, I can bump up the saturation or the vibrance. And I can do these things. Now, if I click OK, technically I've done those things permanently to the image. Let's undo that. And let's first run, the next bonus tip, first run a convert for smart filters, because that will take your layer and put it in a container called a smart object. So you still have your layer, you still have access to your mask, but it's buried inside that smart object now. And now when I go run that same Camera Raw filter, the one I just ran, and I click the exposure, I think we did that. And we make it a little bit more vibrant. And we go in and make it maybe a little bit more contrasty or less contrasty, maybe a little bit more contrasty. And we click OK. Everything I just did is now in a non-destructive smart filter. So I could always go in and turn it off. I can always go back in and turn it on. So I don't want to see it anymore, turn it off. I want to see it again, turn it on. I want to get back and edit it some more. Double click on the smart filter that you did, and I can say, well, I want to make it brighter now. Make it even brighter. Click OK. And again, it renders that, and that is non-destructive to those original pixels. So now when I save this, it will always have the ability to go back and re-edit that or simply turn it off. And now we see how much darker that photo was originally and turn it back on. Well, it's too bright, no problem. Go back into it and bring back down the exposure. Click OK. Done. Okay. Let's try a different photo now. Let's say I like the colors in, let's find something colorful. I like the colors of these bowls. I would love to use these colors for something else. Actually, no, it's a little too simple. Let's do it a different way. Fall's coming up eventually. Let's say we want to use some of these fall colors. In Photoshop, you now have the ability, oh, I'm out of time. You have the ability really quickly to go in and go to image capture and capture from image, and you can capture colors, patterns, gradients, color themes, and you can pick the colors you want and save it to a library. All right, folks, that's it. I am out of time. Whew, those last few minutes snuck up on me. Thanks for watching. Cheers, everybody. We will catch you next Friday for another, maybe we'll just do a part 2 of this, and we'll just keep going. Tips and tricks in Photoshop. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.